Ground Zero Lounge. It's it's the summer edition. This one is especially special because it's a benefit for Penny, who works here as the bartender. She's going to be having surgery in about a week or two, so we're going to be passing around a bucket. So if you can, pitch in whatever you can to help support her, we'd appreciate that. And at this time, I'd like to introduce to you the host of Ground Zero, Clyde Lewis.
Thanks, guys. As you may well know, I got a green little ball on my toe. I had a toe surgery, so that's why I'm walking around with a cane. So
Hey,
I'm just
let's
gonna
try this one.
I'm gonna sit down for a minute. It's working. This is working.
Yeah,
I can
but
hear
then
you.
I got to pass that one.
Oh, you did? Okay. Thank you. Handing the torch, the microphone. Strings attached, yes, that's exactly what's going on. Well, guys, I don't know if you've heard, but a 7.4 earthquake hit New Zealand just about 2 hours ago. It triggered a tsunami. It was last Friday, I believe. It was last Friday. We did a show called Fistful of Tremors. And the reason why we did it was because we were noticing a swarm of earthquakes were happening in California. We had about 700 at about 3.5, 4.5. And I was noticing that as you look in the USGS, you start noticing that there are P waves and S waves that are all over, that are basically shaking the entire continent right now. And they're moving, and I think Chile had an earthquake yesterday, a 6.5. And we had said that probably there are two things we're looking at here. One, that the Earth's P waves and S waves are responding to something. And I can tell you that it's quite possibly that the planet is responding to some extraterrestrial activity. And I'm not talking about aliens here, I'm talking about near-Earth objects, potentially hazardous asteroids, and other things that may be part of the Beta Taurids that are going to be happening in the next 2 weeks. Now, I'm not going to shout doomsday here because I know that the best way to guarantee that nothing's going to happen is to say, oh, it's going to happen on this day, it's going to happen this way and that way. What I am going to tell you, though, is that the Beta Taurids, every time we have had a skip with the Beta Taurids, something has happened. Meaning that something in the sky tends to, go kind of wonky. And so we have the situation where back in 1908, thank you, sweetheart. Back in 1908, there was something called the Tunguska event, and what that was something exploded over Siberia, and it was it was a meteor. It exploded and it flattened 700 miles of trees in a forested area there, and it was when we were in the Beta Taurids. Now, people in Europe, all the way down into England, said that it was so bright when it exploded. It was so bright that they were in the dark and they could actually read by the light that was in the sky that lingered after this thing exploded. So it was a major situation. Now, for any of you that heard the show a while back, one of the things that I find interesting is that since I've changed my network, that we've had some great shows that go national. We have the national hours, and then of course, after the national hours, I do the 2 hours that are local, and the 2 hours that are local go on the internet, and we get a lot of interesting stuff. Well, I managed to dig through some of my archives, and I found the speech that Jim Bridenstine made when he was speaking at the conference that they had to analyze the trajectories of meteors. And one of the things he talked about was Chelyabinsk. And see, here's the thing, when I did the show back in 2013, they were looking at another asteroid that came within, I'd say, 17,000 miles of the planet. Now, Clark's orbit for satellites is 23,000. So if you're looking at a satellite that's 23,000 outside the Earth and something comes in within 17,000, they're pretty damn lucky that no satellite got hit. They're not telling us that no satellite got hit, but still, a satellite could have been knocked out of the sky. I mean, you don't need an explosion or a direct hit to kind of interfere with what's going on planet Earth with asteroids. You can have an airburst, which is what happened at Tunguska. That was an airburst, and it flattened the forests above. And if we had electronics, it probably would have caused an EMP. So, electromagnetic pulse could take out power. I know that when Chelyabinsk happened in 2013, because I was on the air when it went down, there were a number of people who called me on landlines from Russia to tell me what had happened. Cell phone service was out in that area. There were rumors that Russia tried to intercept it, because if you look back at what they called they had video footage of this thing. They also had dash cam footage of this thing. And it actually was brighter, 30 times brighter than the sun when it exploded. 30 times brighter than the sun when it exploded over Chelyabinsk. Well, I don't know. Imagine the sun 30 times. I mean, imagine, I would say a lot brighter than arc welders, when they arc weld. It's probably brighter than that. So, and also it was 30 times, the explosion was 30 times that of Nagasaki, Hiroshima. So you have an explosion that big in the sky, and the thing that exploded was about the size of a city bus. So you have something the size of a city bus exploding over a place, and the thing is, it was near the Ural Mountains. It's in an area where they consider it to be Russia's Area 51, actually, because they do a lot of testing there, nuclear testing. They did a lot of plane testing. In fact, I think the U-2 was shot down over this area, Chelyabinsk, Russia. So, when Bridenstine was speaking at the get-together at NASA, or when NASA was doing their get-together, and he's the president of NASA, he said that we were tracking, and this is exactly, and I said the same thing, but everybody says, oh, no, I had nothing to do with it. He said we were tracking an asteroid that was coming within 17,000 miles of planet Earth, and while we weren't looking, something got in that was a sweeper, or what they call a stowaway. And what a stowaway is something that hitches a ride on a big rock and then departs and goes in another direction. So while we were looking, who knows where in space, and this thing coming in, something else came in and exploded over Russia. So the Beta Taurids, what we're looking at is we're looking at bolide meteors that will be seen in the daylight, okay? These things will be seen in the daylight, and they'll be exploding over areas and you may not know where it's gonna happen or how it's gonna happen, but we've had, since January, according to Marshall Masters, we've had about 700 exploding fireballs in the sky, and this is just pre-Beta Taurids. So when the Beta Taurids happen, we may have a hell of a lot more coming in and exploding over areas. Now, we look at the planet, and we know that most of the planet is covered in water. So, more so than not, we will be seeing these things exploding over water, if anything else. But if we have a direct hit, we could have a tsunami. If we have action going on in space, we could be seeing triggered earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanoes. And we just had a volcano erupt in Indonesia. We have a volcano now that we're looking at that's there in Russia that may trigger. We've had some swarms going on in Yellowstone. Now that's the one that everybody's looking at, because if that explodes, what will happen is that the eastern current that goes from west to east will blow all kinds of ash and smoke to the eastern seaboard, and they would have nuclear winter. It would be the equivalent of nuclear winter. Now, once again, I'm not saying it's going to happen. What I'm saying is that we're living in times where the craziest stuff is going down. Just a 7.4 in New Zealand, a 6.4 the other day in Chile. These are devastating earthquakes, triggering tsunamis. And I can't stress enough. I mean, it was interesting that I think, when Ground Zero first went on KXL, we were approached by a company here in Portland and asked us if we would do survival food or survival stuff. And they were here in Portland. Well, we said, sure, we'd do that. But we never really saw a pattern going on with weather, a pattern going on with geological seismic stuff. We didn't see the pattern, okay? But now, what's really weird is we see the pattern now. And we see the pattern of cataclysm and catastrophe that's happening a lot more. And there are a number of debates as to why it's happening, and I'm saying, and what I believe is there's too much tinkering with Mother Nature. And as I said in my Godzilla show last night, when I was talking about Godzilla, people say, are you kidding me? You're talking about Godzilla. Well, Godzilla is a force of nature. That's the representation of Godzilla, a force of nature. And in the new movie, they're thinking, well, we'll be able to tame the force of nature to basically kill who we want them to kill. And that's the attitude I think a lot of times we're seeing these technocrats having. You look at groups like the Keith Group, and you may want to take these names down. Look up the Keith Group, and let's talk about how the Keith Group wants to drop into the sky sulfates and other things to reflect back the heat from the sky. And when we create these cooler temperatures, and these cooler temperatures are fighting with the warmer temperatures, you have some pretty badass thunderstorms moving in. You have bombogenesis moving in. You have 87 tornadoes in tornado season. Now this isn't climate change stuff, okay? They'll tell you it's climate change. What it is, it's a spike in what is known as climate disruption. And what we have is when we have a climate disruption, it's because something isn't right. Something is, I mean, here's the thing too. This winter, they kept the polar vortex so low that even in the wintertime, we saw the ice caps melting. And it had nothing to do with the season, because usually during the season we see the ice caps melting anyway. They go in the summertime and they say, see, the ice caps are melting. But you go to Glacier National Park, and they had to remove the signs that said in 10 years we're going to see the glacier melt. It didn't happen. 2020 is next year, and they have enough snow now to actually, they were ordered to remove the signs that say the Glacier National Park will disappear because of global warming. Huh? What do you mean, what do we do? We adapt. Well, how? How do you adapt to a snowstorm? What do you do when it snows? I don't know what you do when it snows. I can't tell you. I mean, what do you do when it snows? Not you tell me. You tell me what you do when it snows. I don't know what you do when it snows. Huh? What's that? You can survive a snowstorm. You can survive a snowstorm. What do you mean, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Well, I prepare. I have food in my house. Okay? I have food in my house. You have potable water in your house. You have flashlights with extra batteries. You have crank-up radios. You have all those things in your house to protect yourself if you're stuck. If you're stuck, you've got to have food in the house to eat. You have to have a generator. I have a generator that basically, the reason why I have to have a generator in the house is because if I don't have one, I use a CPAP, and if I can't breathe when I sleep, I'll probably suffocate. So you got to have all this stuff for yourself. You got to learn how to adapt. You got to be prepared for it. And that's why I'm saying, in the past, we never really thought about preparedness patterns, but now you got to start thinking about them because it's not climate change. In fact, I had a conversation with my wife today because she's doing it. Yeah, she's doing a new show on the Fringe FM called Real Talk, and it's going to be on next week, next Wednesday. It's going to be on, so you guys want to listen to it. We were having a debate today about climate change. And what's really fun about the debate is that Janine came up with something that I think everybody can admit to, and that is we're having climate challenges. That it's not just the fact that they want to get us to politically believe in climate change, it's a climate challenge. And the climate challenge is survival. The climate challenge is preparedness. In fact, it was really cool because we were able to develop a sort of a public service announcement that gave the lowdown on exactly what you need to do to prepare. It talked about everything you need to do. Have a plan. Get things necessary for your kids. Have clothing that they can wear that's warm, and make sure that that clothing will fit them when the time comes because they grow out of things. Also have canned foods. Have food that'll have a shelf life that's 25 years or whatever. We offer some of that if you go to preparewithgroundzero.com. We have $75 gets you 2 weeks worth of food, and it lasts 25 years on the shelf. And don't forget the puppies and the kittens. That's what it said in the thing, didn't it? It said, don't forget your pets. If you want to, wow, that's potent. If you want to, it has lemon in it, it's really potent. If you want to save your pets and you want to protect them, have a kind of a bug out bag for them too if you have to get out. And see, most of the people that were living in these tornado areas, they didn't expect 87 tornadoes, 89 tornadoes.
Real estate is really cheap there now.
Real estate's cheap. But anyway, they weren't expecting this. And I don't think anybody, I mean, we're so used to having things calm, and we have things, you know, we're so used to having things that aren't disrupted, but you have to look around you and understand that just because it's not affecting you directly, that it won't affect you eventually. Think about this. Planting season in the Midwest now has been delayed. Many farmers are applying for insurance. They're applying because they can't plant. Planting was extended. The corn that was in the silos has been actually contaminated because of the fact that the water that came in broke open the silos and that corn got contaminated. So we're going to have a low planting season because of the weather that we had there. Now, and if you want to, you know, think about this, not only are we going to have a low planting season, but everything affects everything, and eventually we'll start seeing prices go up for food, prices go up for meat, prices go up for chicken and anything poultry, anything beef. Yeah, go vegetarian, it'll be cheaper, but still the farms are going to be having to pass, you know, their losses onto you, on the vegetables, yeah. And so everything affects everything. And if you think that you're gonna be able to handle it, there are a lot of people that don't understand how fragile our lives are. People sometimes, they're 3 paychecks away from being homeless. Maybe even 1 paycheck away from being homeless. And that's something that I think all of us need to understand is a little bit of prevention and a little bit of protection and a little bit of preparedness is not gonna hurt anybody. I had somebody, I was on the air, and some woman called and she says, "Well, what about me?" She says, "I'm on a fixed income. I can't afford to prepare." And I said, "Really?" I said, "When you go out to the store and you buy yourself a can of Campbell's chicken noodle soup, why don't you buy yourself a second can? And just put that in your pantry. Every time you go out, you buy 2 of everything. It's not going to set you back all that much. Just basically buy 2 of everything." And so that is why that's what would help you, because somebody pay $75 to get your 2-year supply, your 2-week supply, I'm sorry, and they say, "Well, I can't afford that." Well, yes, you can. Think of the things that you can cut out for a little while just so that you can be prepared. I mean, most of the time going to a movie costs you $50 or $75. I mean, it's a lot of money now to go to a movie. Well, you can cut out 1 movie out of your schedule just so you can save enough money to get some food to have in your house that has a 25-year shelf life. It's not going to bother you. Take some time to get bottled water. I mean, right now we have bottled water everywhere, and you can actually buy it and keep it in the house for some time. You can actually get jugs of water and fill them up, put a little tiny drop of chlorine in there to keep it from getting algae in it, and you have potable water in the house so that you can wash, so that you can do dishes, so you can do all those things. Staples of food, I always tell people too, you're always telling people, Clyde, go get yourself your food. Well, here's something else you need to get too: spices. You can eat all the beans, you can eat all the rice, you can eat all these things, but you got to have something to make them taste good. Salt, pepper, sriracha. Have those things available too, because those things are good. But it's important that when you see all these things happen, you got to get a clue and say, I don't want to be that person that's going to be sitting in the house waiting for the first responders to show up, because they're not going to show up. I remember back when there was this hurricane, I think it was Hurricane Sandy. Hurricane Sandy happened, and I remember they had the news there. There was a group of people in the news that were going out to these areas, and they were shoving microphones in people's faces, and they were saying things like, "Barack Obama, please save us. Barack Obama, please save us." And I'm shaking my head going, he's not going to save you, and he doesn't care about you. And the first responders, they're going to go to the areas that have the most tension first. All the outlying areas, you're going to be waiting about a week or 2 before somebody even comes to find you. And that's from an earthquake, that's from a flood. I remember I used to run flood control for Salt Lake County, and we had the Jordan River, Jordan River in Utah, overflowed because of a bad rainstorm. It took us at least 5 days to get to those. There was a trailer park right near the river. It took us 5 days to get to those people because we had to wait 1 day for the water to recede, and then all we did is we drove trucks, huge bobtail trucks, into the areas, and then we had to get out of the trucks and help the people wade through the water to get into the trucks. I remember having to carry like all sorts of things, like pets and suitcases, and the people that were there didn't even realize what hit them. And the other danger that we were facing was that a power line went down. And so we were told we couldn't get into the area because the power line was causing the entire area to have electricity going through the water. We could have been electrocuted. So there's so many things that I don't think people realize just how hard it is for first responders to get to you and to do what they need to do. And so it's up to you to take care of yourself and survive. And there are things that I'm sure you can't avoid, but those are things that happen, that are random. But most of the time, you can pretty well, in an aftermath situation, save yourself if you have things ready and prepared. You prepare a first aid kit. People have first aid kits in their home. Why? Because they are prepared for if someone gets cut, or if they get a broken arm, or if they have anything happen to them, they have a first aid kit in their house. Well, you know what? You're not going to be able to eat Band-Aids when you're not going to be able to get to a store. Another thing that's been happening lately, too, that I want everybody to be aware of, and that is we've been having a lot of electronic shutdowns lately. And in fact, the other day I got a report, somebody was saying that in a hospital they were at, their whole system went down and they couldn't admit people into the hospital. So people were in the emergency room sick because they couldn't use their computer systems. Well, here's one of the problems with the Internet of Things. A lot of things that we do, a lot of things that we rely on are connected to the Internet. I always hear people all the time, well, the Internet doesn't affect me because I don't get online, I don't do social media, I don't do any of that stuff. Doesn't matter. The Internet of Things are taking care of everything. The cash register they're using here is on the Internet. The cash registers they use at places where you buy food use the Internet. Telephones sometimes use something called a VoIP system. That uses the Internet. A lot of the grid systems are run and operated by the Internet. If any of these things go down, you're stuck. So you can't get money out of your ATM, you can't get anything. So it's always good to have a little cash on hand, and it's always nice to have your gas tank full when these things happen. It's just a matter of living life defensively, rather than just going through life thinking, well, nothing's going to happen to me. If you live life defensively, then when things do go down and when you do have problems, you're not going to be worrying all that much because you're going to be able to stay in your house and be able to cook food for your family and be able to get clean and do the things you want to do and just listen to your radio, and hopefully you'll be able to avoid the danger. And it can be something as simple as, there's a shooting down the street, you can't get out of your house because they want you to shelter in place. It's something that, just because people tell you to be prepared, they're not asking you to stay in a bunker. They're not asking you to live in your basement. All we're saying is that we are seeing things now happening in such a pattern, in such frequency, that it would be silly not to prepare. It'd be crazy not to be prepared. And it's like, what was it? I've been getting a lot of emails lately because of the situation in New Zealand, the situation in Chile. Somebody said, well, didn't you just do a show about earthquakes? I go, yeah, we're rerunning that show tonight, by the way. And the reason why we're rerunning that show, in fact, we made that decision 3 days ago, because we said, we're thinking that if we run that earthquake show again, people will get the message that something is going on. Now, I'm hoping we don't get the big one here, but my God, everything has been happening in such a sequence, it makes you worry and wonder if that's happening, or if that's going to happen. And I don't know what you're feeling or thinking, but I think that that's the first thing I'd do, is I would figure out what I'm going to do and what plan I have. You should have a plan for your family as well. I mean, your family, you should have a plan that if you're separated, you have a place you're going to meet. Because here's the thing about Oregon, Portland especially. I go to work every day, and I go to work on the west side of town. And my wife is on the east side of town. So what is going to happen if the bridge is shut down and I can't get to her?
Can I just say this?
You want to say something? Oh, hold on.
Did I really freak you out today when I talked about the Cascadia subduction fault zone?
Yes, you did.
Sorry.
Yeah, we were talking about that too today. Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, come on. It's like the Cascadia fault zone, subduction zone is, it can be active. Well, okay. How many?
700 years ago it hit.
Yeah, 700 years ago.
And it's due now.
I didn't even tell you this. You know what I was monitoring the other day? 35 earthquakes at Mount St. Helens. That happened the other day. A swarm of them. Now, I don't know if Mount St. Helens is going to blow again, but certainly you need to pay attention when you have that many happening. When you have that many on the coast too.
It's not going to impact us like the Cascadia
Right.
It will.
Well,
I mean, it's going to happen.
well, it will eventually. Let's hope not soon.
It will happen.
Is it going to be the
It's
9.0?
overdue by 300 years.
Okay.
It's overdue 300 years.
Overdue
according
300
to
years.
records.
Overdue 300 years.
So it's locked and loaded and ready to snap.
She freaking you out yet? I'm just.
I work in emergency management.
Yeah, she works in emergency management. She knows this stuff, and she knows what everybody's preparing for, and she knows where the money isn't going. She knows where the money is going, and you know where the money isn't going? Protecting you.
Yeah, no shit.
It's true. I mean, I had a discussion with her about that. She said to me, she says, you know where the money's going? Not to protect people.
It's going to oil.
It's going to Kate Brown.
Sure.
Anyway. So, just so you know, this has been on my mind since the tornadoes hit. But I was talking about this before the tornadoes hit. I had predicted, I said, we keep messing with the jet stream. We keep messing with nuclei ice to seed clouds. And you're certainly going to have a cold front and a warm front mixed together with some very, very, very threatening thunderstorms and tornadoes. Hurricane season started early this year. Now, we haven't had that many hurricanes, or we haven't had any really bad hurricanes, but hurricane season started early this year. It started in May. And usually it starts later, like in June, July. But
November.
well, we have that in November too, but I'm just saying that we had a tropical depression start in May, and that was the earliest we ever had a tropical depression in the Caribbean. So, I mean, there are a lot of things happening that certainly need to be addressed. And another thing too is, you know, people. It's not just the earth, it's not just nature, it's people. People are on their frayed nerves. And being on their frayed nerves, they certainly will do something. And don't be surprised, you'll be hearing about more things. And another thing too, war is coming again. And you know, during war, we tend to think that everything's going to be peachy keen fine. Well, no. I mean, if we're going to be kicking a hornet's nest again, and we're going to be going into Iran, then you once again are opening the door for terrorism. Another thing too is with the borders the way they're being handled right now, not only are we having to deal with the possibility of terrorism again, but we have heard that a lot of people are going over the borders right now with Ebola, chickenpox, and measles. And soon they're going to they're going to require everybody to get their measles shots. Even if you've had them before, they're going to require you to get them again. They're taking away religious preferences now. You can't get out of your shots with saying that your religious beliefs won't let you do it. They're doing that in New York now, and every other states are going to follow suit. It's going to happen. So, I mean, that's another thing you have to be prepared for, is medical. Be prepared with the right kind of supplements and foods that are going to make you healthy and happy, and that you'll be able to get through these things. Because it used to be back in the old days, when you watched the Brady Bunch, and Marcia and Greg and Peter and Jan and all the happy family, they all got measles and they were all happy. Oh, we have measles, we're out of school, we get to go to school in a couple days. Now it's, you have the measles, you will die. Whatever happened? Why is that happening? Because we have mutant genes and mutant diseases that are creating this stuff. It's doing it, and it's something that we all need to understand and learn about, and understand that we live now in a time where things are fragile. And it's really odd that we live in the 21st century and we've gone from being tough and being able to weather the storms to being fragile now. The fragility is in my opinion amazing. I can't believe that this much fragility is happening in this country and in the world right now. Everything is just on a thin line, and that thin line is fraying as we speak. And so, I mean, that's the only message I can give you at this time. I can give you that preparedness is the most important thing that you can consider right now. And I haven't been that animate about something as much as I am about being prepared. You know, it's very important that we look into what we can do to better ourselves in that regard, because it's a warning going out now. You think, I get people all the time saying to me things like, well, we're all going to be fine. We're all going to be fine. Nothing really is happening. No, what they're saying is nothing really is happening to me. Nothing is really happening that satisfies my my idea of what danger is. I'm nowhere near the danger, so it's not going to affect me. Well, you know what? Out of sight, out of mind. So what? You don't care. But when it does happen to you, how many times have you heard this on the news? I just can't believe this happened. You see it in the movies, but you just don't know what's going to happen here. Well, guess what, guys? It is happening. And yeah, you see it in the movies, but you're going to see it where you live. Okay? Other things you hear. I just can't believe that shooting happened in this neighborhood. Usually you don't think they happen here, but they are now. Why? Well, because look around you. Things are changing. We no longer are living in a time, and maybe it'll subside one day, but we're in a time where, it's hot. It's hot, it's crazy, and it's happening. And we need to be aware, and we need to be prepared. And we need to have an ounce of discretion, and we need to be very aware of everything around us now. Because no one else is going to look out for you. You have to look out for you. As I said, you got to live defensively. Meaning, always have something prepared so that you can survive. Because, I just don't know whatever happened to adaptation. But people have adapted in the past, but now they don't know how. I don't know where we stopped learning how to live and survive. I guess maybe the Boy Scout handbook would be a good book to have, because when I was a Boy Scout, we knew how to survive. We built fires, we tied knots, we lived in beds as Boy Scouts. So anyway, how are we doing for time? I'm just rattling on here, and I'm just thinking everybody seems to want to talk, and I'm just going and going and going. So how are we doing? I got about 15 minutes. Well, if I got 15 minutes, anybody have anything they want to say? Any questions they may have? If they have any other things that maybe we need to bring up and talk about that I'm not talking about? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller?
I heard about a volcano that erupted in Mexico.
Yeah. Popocatépetl, how do you mind to say it? Popocatépetl, or whatever it is. Yeah, we had one that, we're having a lot of volcanic activity. And here's the thing about volcanic activity. Do you think for 1 minute that these people that want your money for the whole climate thing are going to tell you about how volcanoes affect climate and how they're cooling the planet? And yet we're cooling the planet even more? We've had a late summer, or a late spring. We've had some hot spikes, but in reality, we're still pretty cool. We're still having a cool spring right now. I mean, summer's not until what, next month or whatever. But I'm just saying, we are finding ourselves in a situation where things are cooler right now. I mean, don't let anybody kid you. We are cooler than we were this time last year. And that's kind of weird saying that when we just had 90-degree temperatures. But when I was in Palm Springs just about a week ago, temperatures were like in the 70s and the 80s. Usually by this time, they're in the hundreds, like 110, 120. So we're cooling down a little bit right now. I think something's going down where, not only have we been, pouring slurries of iron into the ocean to have algae blooms to cool the planet, we're dumping trails into the sky to actually cool the planet. We have volcanoes cooling the planet, so we're actually on a cooling trend. But they won't mention that because it's not going to get them any more money or any more support. But I'm not saying that we should not, help the planet in any way we can. I'm just saying let's be a little open and a little leery about, what you're being told about what's going on and what isn't going on. Okay, go ahead and get the microphone. Okay, yes, I will. I'll make the announcement. I can't hear you. Turn the mic back on again. There you go.
You mentioned that there was a earthquake in New Zealand and it created a tsunami. Where's that tsunami headed?
I didn't know. I just got in from the newsroom. Janine and I were working on her podcast, and I got the flash on my computer. All I saw was they had a swarm of earthquakes in New Zealand with a big 7.4. They said a tsunami had been activated, and they didn't say where it was going. I don't know if it's going to go this far. I mean, I don't know if the waves are going north, but I don't know where it's going to end up eventually. But yeah, a tsunami was triggered. Yeah, go ahead. Turn the mic on. Just flip the switch. Okay.
One of my concerns right now is like it's the urbanization of the United States. And I remember a couple years ago when we had a bad snowstorm, you were talking about you're on the west side, your wife's on the east side trying to get across. Taking like 5 hours, even just a couple hours just find a bridge to get across there in Portland.
Right.
Do you think that the high urbanization that we've been undergoing is just going to make a disaster out of disaster if anything bad happens?
Well, I mean, if you want to get a cue or a clue about this, the clue is that they take the money that they usually use for preparedness and they throw it somewhere else. Like I remember when Sam Adams was mayor, I said to him, I said, you know, they should have more money for snow removal here in the state, and they don't. He says, well, you don't understand. So I do understand. I used to do roads and plowing when I lived in Utah. And we got up at like 4 in the morning. We had those roads ready to go for rush hour. I said, I don't know why we can't do it here. Well, it's different. And it's not different. I said, there's money set aside for tornado disasters. And if a snowstorm or if a snowflake that falls in Troutdale is going to scare the hell out of everybody, then we should have preparedness for this. And so last time we had a bad snowstorm in the city, they had to ask for like $5 million from the government to help them out, and they still couldn't get it done right. Something tells me, like forever, that something tells me the money is not spent well here. I just learned from my wife in her podcast today that we had all those wildfires in California. Well, guess what? When money had to be diverted for the wall, where did it get taken out of? Preventing wildfires. So, I mean, they don't know what they're doing with the money. They don't see they don't see the idea of prevention. Why? Because capital, disaster capital is far more lucrative than basically preventing something. If you just let it burn, or if you just let it fall, if you just let it be destroyed, there's more money in getting contracts out to rebuild everything because they just don't care. And that's why I'm saying you should care, because they don't care. They'll just let it burn. They'll just let it, be destroyed because they know they're going to be making bank off of rebuilding. And in the meantime, every single one of us are going to be fighting for that one crust of bread while they're rebuilding and making money off of all the tragedy that's happening in the world right now. So yeah, I would say, prepare and be prepared to do what you need to do to survive, because they're not going to do anything for you. And what? They're going to apply for emergency money? Where's that emergency money going to go? They applied for emergency money after the snow fell, 2 seasons ago. We didn't benefit from that. People were still having to pay for the snow damages, and people couldn't even get out of their driveways for 3 days. The city shut down for 3 days. So you know that it's not working that way, and that you have to do something about it. If you depend on them, you might as well just be spitting in the wind. It's not going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. Yeah. Anyone? Bueller? Anyone have any questions? Anyone want to talk about something other than what I'm talking about? Anybody has any questions or ideas that I've ignored or need to talk about?
Hi, Clyde.
Hey.
I heard on the border crisis, there's also a lot of terrorists coming across.
Yes.
Statistics, I don't remember exactly where I heard them, but there's like 41 terror cells within our country.
Mm-hmm.
Britain has like only one.
Right.
Do you have any information on something like that?
Well, the statistics, of course, they come and they go, and it's a lot of it is being put out for political reasons, of course. What do you need to say?
Do you remember when you and I were driving in the pothole of the Pacific Northwest and we picked up the Colville station that the I can't even say terrorists, were bouncing the signal?
Oh yeah, they're bouncing signals.
No, but that was what, 2014 or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
So I reported everything to a branch of the military that does special intelligence. So as far as we stand right now, all I know is they went from what they were bouncing off of, which were the old radio
towers.
Do you remember this?
They were using a religious station carrier.
No, they were using the old towers for AM to talk to each other.
She's talking about number
across the
stations.
nation.
She was talking about number stations.
And it was absolutely real.
Yeah.
Absolutely real, and you were witness to it.
Yeah, I was.
So
Let me explain what's going on. Janine is saying, and this is true, we accidentally picked up.
the Jag did.
Yeah, the Jag did.
We didn't.
I'm just saying, the car accidentally.
Lower numbers,
Yeah,
and
right.
the car picked it up.
We picked up a number station that was transmitting terror codes, and they were bouncing it off an old tower. And this
No,
is
you were bouncing
2014.
it off all over the United States. So
Yeah.
you're saying how many? 41. So he's got 41. And so
Well, we
if
didn't.
there's
She
still-
sent the
I-
transmission to a number of her friends that she knew that were in decoding this type of transmission, and they said that it was a terror. It was a terror
if there's-
cell
I
that was
guess
bouncing
what
it. They
he's
couldn't see what
saying
it
is
was.
that they're still here.
They are here.
Okay, no, they're still here.
That's why I'm trying to explain it. Number stations, and I've done shows about this before. Number stations are a rudimentary way to get messages to agents without using cell phones. And what they do is they do low power broadcasts over old transmitters and they send number codes. All they have to do is just go uno, dos, tres, seis, siete, ocho. All they have to do is just read those numbers off. They have an agent out there writing them down on a piece of paper. They have a decode that they can go in and find out what the message is. And she and I were in a car and we picked it up as we were driving out near Troutdale. And it was being bounced off an old tower. And we tried to figure out where it was coming from. Well, we couldn't, but we knew it was a terror cell broadcasting on shortwave.
And you did a show similar to that.
Yeah, I did.
Like a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, there were actually some, I think it was some Cuban agents that were arrested in Florida. And they got this message to carry out some attack or something, I don't know where it was, and they said, where did you get the messages? It says, we got them from a shortwave radio. So they're still using rudimentary ways to get the message out. And that's what they do. And that's how it's done. So yeah, there are terror cells that are using shortwave in order to get their messages out. You know, when you hear the term, we heard some chatter, that's what they're talking about. Radio chatter is what they're talking about.
No, it's bits and bytes.
Bits and bytes, yeah. Anybody else? Any other questions? Anything else? Something I didn't bring up, you want to bring up? Something that, I think we're doing well for time, aren't we? We're about, let me just say this. We're going to wrap up because, you know, we're going to pass around the little bowl. And tonight is just, what's that? It's a big bowl. A big bowl. Anyway, there's a big bowl, and we're going to be passing it around. And it's for Penny. We're getting donations for Penny. She's going to go into the hospital and get surgery. Look at it as a tip. Give her a big tip tonight, and it's all going to her. Give her a big hand for all she does for us. She's going to be going in for valve surgery, open heart surgery, valve surgery. And we'd really appreciate it because she's going to be out of work for a while and she has to take care of her kids. And she's like holding down 3 jobs to do this. We also have a GoFundMe for her if you want to go to GoFundMe, if you feel, it's on the Facebook page, the Ground Zero Facebook page. It's right there pinned to the top. You just go there and you'll be able to donate there as well. So Ron will be passing that around. Hi, Penny. I didn't know you were here, sweetheart. Be generous because, you know, Penny's going to the hospital at the end of the month. So be generous and help her out. On the 26th, yes. All right, so we're going to be passing this around. Meanwhile, we have merchandise. If you want to come by, I'll be signing shirts and all kinds of cool stuff while I'm here. And just have some fun. We're going to do some karaoke later, and it's just going to be a good time for everybody. Thank you for coming out to the Ground Zero Lounge, and thank you for helping Penny. It's a good cause. Thank you so much.